Picture a car showroom in Germany. A customer walks in, looks at a sleek electric SUV, checks the badge, and assumes it rolled out of a factory in Stuttgart or Shanghai. It didn't. It came from India. That's not a one-off story anymore. In just 3 months, the number of electric vehicles India shipped to other countries jumped by 14 times. Not 14%, 14 times over. And some of those cars are now sitting in showrooms across nearly 50 countries, several of them in Europe, the exact territory Tesla and BYD have spent years fighting to control. So here's what we're actually going to unpack today. Which Indian companies pulled this off, why it happened right now and not 5 years ago, and whether it changes anything for the two companies everyone assumes own the EV conversation, Tesla and BYD. Quick favor before we dive in. Hit subscribe if this is your first time here. It genuinely helps the channel. Now, back to the story. For most of the last decade, the global EV conversation had a fixed cast of characters. Tesla represented Silicon Valley ambition. BYD represented Chinese manufacturing muscle. Europe represented strict standards and mature charging networks. India barely got a mention, and when it did, it was usually framed as a country that would eventually buy a lot of EVs, not one that would build and ship them to the rest of the world. That framing wasn't unfair at the time. Tata Motors, Mahindra, and Maruti Suzuki had all been building vehicles domestically for decades, but exporting electric vehicles at any serious volume simply wasn't part of the story yet. That gap just closed, and it closed fast. Let's get specific, because the scale here matters. In the April to June quarter of 2026, India shipped over 15,600 electric vehicles abroad, compared to roughly 1,100 units in the same quarter a year earlier. One quarter alone outpaced more than half of everything India exported in electric vehicles during the entire previous financial year. Maruti Suzuki is the name driving most of this. Its e-Vitara model alone accounted for over 15,000 of those exported units, reaching close to 50 countries and adding 20 brand new international markets in that quarter, the majority of them across Europe. Cracking European markets isn't easy for any manufacturer. The region runs some of the toughest safety and emissions certification processes on the planet. So this wasn't a lucky shipment, it was a cleared bar. Some of this timing was helped by circumstances outside India's control. Fuel prices climbed in multiple regions following tensions tied to the US-Iran conflict, pushing more buyers worldwide toward electric alternatives. But timing only helps if you already have the product ready to sell, and that's the part India's manufacturers had actually built out in advance. Tata Motors is playing this differently, and arguably on a larger scale than anyone else in the country. The company has committed close to $5 billion, around 40,000 crore rupees, over the next 5 years, aiming to lift total production capacity from about 900,000 vehicles a year to 1.3 million by 2031. Part of that plan involves growing its electric lineup from 6 models to 10, with the UK specifically named as an export target. Tata also holds a card most domestic rivals don't have, ownership of Jaguar Land Rover, which gives it engineering depth and brand recognition in markets that are usually brutal for a new entrant to break into. Early in 2026, Tata opened a new plant in Panapakkam, Tamil Nadu, built jointly with Jaguar Land Rover, carrying a price tag of roughly $1 billion and an annual capacity of 250,000 vehicles. Right now it's assembling the Range Rover Evoque from imported kits, production that used to happen in Pune, and it's expected to directly employ around 5,000 people, with a much larger ripple effect across suppliers. Tata's total EV investment sits around $4 billion, concentrated on SUVs and crossovers, with at least 5 new electric models planned by 2030. That includes a new premium sub-brand called Avinya, built specifically with an eye on European buyers and developed with Jaguar Land Rover's engineering support. Mahindra and Mahindra isn't trying to be everywhere at once. Its strategy is narrower: go after right-hand drive markets first, with the UK as the priority, and build export-specific versions of its BE6 and XEV9e electric SUVs for that market. Mahindra is also watching the India-UK Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement closely, since a favorable deal could make shipping Indian-built vehicles into Britain considerably cheaper. On the manufacturing side, its Chakan plant near Pune is expanding towards 750,000 units of total annual capacity, with a dedicated EV line starting around 90,000 units and room to grow to 120,000, backed by an in-house battery assembly setup. None of this happened by accident, and none of it happened overnight either. A few forces converged at the same time. Domestic demand did a lot of the groundwork. India's electric passenger vehicle sales crossed roughly 200,000 units in the last financial year, up more than 80% from the year before. That kind of home market growth gives manufacturers the confidence and the scale to invest seriously in export-grade production. Cost structure is the second piece. Manufacturing in India remains considerably cheaper than in Europe or the US, and in several segments, cheaper than China too, while safety and quality certification have finally caught up to a level that clears strict international requirements, something that wasn't reliably true even 10 years ago. And then there's simple timing. International buyers were actively hunting for cheaper EV options right as fuel costs spiked in several regions, and India's manufacturers happened to have road-tested, export-ready models sitting exactly where global demand was shifting. Here's the part everyone wants answered directly. Does any of this put real pressure on Tesla or BYD? Not head-on, and not yet, but it does reshape the board they're playing on. Tesla's entire identity is built around premium positioning, its software layer, its supercharger network, and a brand that sells a specific kind of tech-forward experience. It competes at a price point most Indian exports aren't even trying to touch. BYD plays a different game. It builds nearly everything itself, batteries included, at a scale that lets it undercut competitors on price across multiple continents. Notably, BYD has already started selling in India directly, testing early volumes here as well. So this isn't a one-way street. India's export push is really competing on a third front: affordability paired with newly earned export credibility. Tata and Mahindra aren't chasing Tesla's software ecosystem or BYD's manufacturing scale. They're going after the enormous global segment of buyers who want a dependable EV without paying a premium, and India can now build and ship that at a cost few other countries can match. Where this gets interesting is the overlap at the bottom of the market. If Indian export volumes keep climbing at this pace, the pricing pressure lands squarest on the affordable EV segment, which happens to be exactly where BYD has been pushing hardest internationally. That's the space worth watching over the next couple of years, not the premium end where Tesla lives. Tata's Avinya-branded EVs are targeting European roads within 2 to 3 years, leaning on Jaguar Land Rover's engineering to meet the region's expectations. Mahindra is holding its next move until the India-UK trade agreement takes clearer shape. And Maruti, on the back of the e-Vitara's momentum, looks set to keep adding new export markets through the rest of 2026. To be clear, this isn't India overtaking the world's EV leaders. Tesla and BYD still sell far more vehicles globally, and India's export numbers, however fast they're growing, are still modest next to China's overall EV export volume. But the trajectory has shifted in a way that's hard to ignore. India has quietly stopped being just an EV market to sell into and started becoming a country the rest of the industry has to build around. If this kind of breakdown is useful, subscribe for more on India's auto industry and where the global EV race is actually headed.